Super Mario RPG has 5 playable characters, and each has their own strengths and weaknesses. However, there are some clear winners in terms of power, utility, and comfort. I'll be rating them with and without the lazy shell, and keep in mind that this is only about the main game, not the content after you complete the main game. So with that out of the way, let's dive right into it. Bowser is primarily a tank and physical damage dealer, but he does have some interesting utility. His Terrorize ability can inflict the fear status, which doubles the damage that you do to enemies and halves the damage you take from them. However, these boosts don't stack with bracers and energizers. That makes it kind of redundant, especially later in the game. The fear status wears off after 3 turns, while bracers and energizers stay around for the entire battle. And in all of the battles where it doesn't do that, because of the Shredder ability, the enemies are immune to fear. So you're usually just better off boosting your own stats with bracers or energizers, or with Gino boosts, since those boosts don't wear off. The other problem with Bowser is his stat spread. At the beginning of the game, he's hugely tanky, which does bump him up a notch. He does have the poison gas ability, and that can inflict poison on many bosses. But later in the game, a lot of the bosses are immune to poison, so that too becomes pretty useless. But Bowser also has a terrible magic attack stat, making his spells even more useless. Many enemies with high physical defense and poor magical defense will still take more damage from Bowser's physical attacks than his magical attacks, and that means that he can't capitalize on their weaknesses. So I would say that Bowser is good, he's useful, but he's not great, so I'm gonna drop him into the B tier. Now with the lazy shell, Bowser has some big problems, because now the one thing that he can do well, physical damage, gets completely nerfed. And sure, like everybody else, he's now gonna not take much damage at all, but he's also not gonna be able to do very much. He's gonna be an obligate healer who doesn't have any healing spells, so Bowser with the lazy shell goes into the C tier. Sorry, Bow Bow. Gino is next, and Gino without the lazy shell is pretty effing great. He can do great physical damage, he can do great magical damage, and of course he has Gino boost. This is going to halve the damage you take and massively increase the damage you deal. The only other way to get these boosts in the game is to either use a bracer and energizer, and that's going to take at least 2 turns if you use the all-party bracer and the all-party energizer, or you can equip a weapon like the Quartz Charm or the Troopa Pin. However, in battles where these boosts really matter, like the Culex battle, those boosts are going to get dispelled anyway. So having someone that can just use your flower points to reapply them is really important. And even though it's going to take more turns to get those boosts up, it's going to be worth it to just have Gino and not have to stock up those items. You can use your frog coins on something else that really matters instead of buying bracers and energizers. You can buy the Sia item, which lets you run away from battles. You can buy the EXP booster, which lets you boost your experience. Duh. So Gino is S tier. Pretty amazing. Gino with the lazy shell is an interesting one, because he still has the utility of Gino boost, but you're going to nerf a lot of his damage. I've heard people describe him as a glass cannon, but his defenses on both sides are actually pretty reasonable, especially with a Gino boost. He just doesn't need the lazy shell. I think he's still great with it, but I'm gonna put him in the A tier with the lazy shell. He just loses a lot of what makes him great. Actually, no, I'm gonna put him in the B tier. I don't think he's as good with the lazy shell. Mallow is an interesting one, because Mallow actually does have a little bit of utility with HP Rain, and he can do some pretty good magic damage with his thunder spells and the snowy spell. Unfortunately, his physical bulk really lets him down, particularly in the later fights. His HP and his physical attacks are also a fair amount weaker than everybody else's, so he just loses a lot in comparison to other characters. One thing he does have going for him, though, is that he, Peach, and Mario have a triple attack that can revive all of your dead characters, so if somebody dies and you switch him out, for example, Gino, you can switch in Mallow, revive them pretty easily, and heal the entire party. I think he's good but not great, and I think he goes just below Bowser in the B tier. No, that's a lie. He goes above Bowser. Editing Tantacles coming in to say that I am a little bit conflicted about Mallow's placement, mainly because of Star Rain, which is an amazing attack that attacks all enemies. Just keep in mind that you can beat the game with any of the characters. They're all good in some way. Now, Mallow with the lazy shell is kind of interesting, because unfortunately you've nerfed a lot of his damage, but he still does have the ability to heal party members. Bro, I was so wrong about this. Wait until the end of the section. Oh my god. And because he's not going to take much damage, you really only need to heal one person at a time. Well, that's kind of a lie. I guess the other 2 characters can get damaged at the same time. But often what I'll find is I'll miss one action command on one character and hit the other one, so I only have one character who's actually injured. So you could, in this form, use him as a dedicated healer, and he'd be quite useful. And this does shore up his defenses perfectly, so I do think this is still in the B tier, but it is better than Mallow without the lazy shell. He's a good candidate to hold it. Not great, just good. Yeah, guys, I was completely wrong. I can already sense the hateful comments coming my way. Because the Lazy Shell not only tanks your ability to deal damage, but it also tanks your ability to heal, because your healing is based on your magic attack stat, and the Lazy Shell tanks that stat. So Mallow with a Lazy Shell goes into the D- tier. He's literally the worst character to have wear the Lazy Shell. Mario's next, and Mario without the Lazy Shell, I'd say is a good solid damage dealer. He's in the A tier. He doesn't have a ton that he can really do besides deal damage, but he is the only one in the party who gets access to jump spells and fire spells. That's pretty useful. He also gets the Lazy Shell weapon, which allows him to do a ton of damage at the end of the game, but I get a little bit annoyed by it because a lot of the damage is random. The Lazy Shell has a large range of damage it can do, so sometimes it'll do like 500 damage and sometimes it'll do like 300 damage, and there's no way to control that. I still think he's pretty solid though. I just wish he had some other form of utility. I mean, I guess you can just have him be the person that uses your special moves if you really want to have him do something else. But what I really want is just to be able to switch him out of the party, honestly. Now, Mario with the Lazy Shell is kind of a garbage tier character. All he can do is deal damage, so he has to go into the C tier, and so if you give him the Lazy Shell, he's not going to be able to do any damage. I mean, the Lazy Shell armor, not his weapon. If he had some other form of utility, I think he would be better, but because he doesn't, there's just nothing he can do with the Lazy Shell equipped, and there is someone who is much better equipped to have it. In fact, everyone can do something more with a Lazy Shell than Mario can. Except Mallow, but we already talked about that. Bowser and Mario are honestly tied for the worst with the Lazy Shell. It's not really, one is not really above the other. And now we finally get to Peach. Peach without the Lazy Shell is pretty amazing. She can heal, she can do damage with Psych Bomb, she can do a ton of physical damage with the Frying Pan. Oh, and did I mention that her Psych Bomb damage is non-elemental, so she can just hit everything no matter what it's weak or strong against? I will admit she's a little bit frail at the beginning of the game, but she very quickly ramps up and gets a ton of HP, and around level 18 or 19, her stats really start to plateau. Unlike Mallow's healing spell, her healing spells can both heal status effects, which is really important. And the one final thing she has going for her is the Sleepy Time spell. The Gunyoke boss and his manager director thing are both vulnerable to sleep. So if you put them to sleep and then only use magical attacks, they literally can't hurt you. There's nothing they can do. So Peach for me has to go into the S tier. There's no other place she fits. She's an amazing character. And Peach with the Lazy Shell is pretty awesome as well. She plays a different role with the Lazy Shell. She's an obligate healer, but she is still a very good healer with the Lazy Shell equipped, and she goes into the S tier. And one other thing is that Peach is the only character who can revive your other characters with magic. Everyone else has to use a pick-me-up. So if you put Peach in the Lazy Shell, basically you're gonna have an invincible team because Peach will always be able to revive them. If you disagree with my takes, let me know in the comments. And if you want to see me beat Super Mario RPG in just 7 hours, click the link right here. I'll also put it in the description. Bye-bye, don't buy a boat.